It was 4 a.m. on the morning after my wedding, and my new mother-in-law was pounding on the bedroom door demanding I get up to make breakfast. With a wry smile, I turned to my husband. "Go on, honey. You go make the coffee." Then I grabbed my suitcase and walked out, leaving his entire family standing there pale-faced. On that late November day in Chicago, the sky wasn't rainy, just filled with a dry, cutting air. The icy wind seemed determined to remind you that Thanksgiving was just around the corner. The quiet suburban street where my family lived was already decorated with strings of yellow Christmas lights. The sound of cars passing by seemed more cheerful than usual, the kind of joy you feel on a day you believe your life is about to turn a new page. My name is Emily. I'm 24 years old and I work as a corporate paralegal specializing in contract review for a manufacturing firm. My profession is a bit arid. I'm used to reading the fine print, scrutinizing clauses, seeing everything sequentially. The only difference is that any contract has its terms laid out clearly, but people's hearts don't often come with addendums. Jake, my husband, is 25 and an HVAC technician. Jake has a kind smile and a calm demeanor that everyone seems to like. A good guy, responsible and respectful. I met Jake when my office building had to overhaul its air conditioning system. At the time, I was rushing from one meeting to another with a stack of files, my face as tense as a violin string. Seeing me in a hurry, Jake just said matter-of-factly, "Ma'am, you might want to step aside or you could slip and get hurt." That was it, and I remembered him. Jake isn't a man of eloquent words. He's more about small gestures. He'd bring me a latte when I worked overtime. He'd help me pull my bike out of the crowded rack so I wouldn't get stuck, and he'd always remind me to buckle my helmet. These are the small things people think are insignificant. For a girl living far from her hometown like me, they're like an anchor. My parents are different. My father, Michael, is a man of few words but has great intuition. My mother, Carol, is sweeter but extremely methodical. The first time Jake came over for dinner, my mom asked him gently, "And after the wedding, where are you two planning to live?" Jake answered without hesitation, "We're getting our own place. I don't want Emily to have to make any sacrifices." My mom gave me a look that said, "Times, did you hear that, Times?" On our wedding day, my family hosted a huge reception for all our relatives. The tables were laden with classic American fare, a prime rib carving station, shrimp cocktail, roasted chicken, and various salads. The older folks reminisced about old times, kids ran around underfoot, and the laughter and conversation filled the air like a bustling holiday market. I was in my wedding dress, my hair swept up in an elegant bun, listening to the music with a mix of joy and nerves in my heart. Jake was by my side. His hand was trembling slightly, but he tried to keep a smile on his face. I looked at him and told myself, Times, well, if a husband and wife support each other, they can do anything. There's nothing to fear. Asterisk. But the moment that truly put me at ease was when my mother-in-law appeared. Sharon, Jake's mom, walked into the reception hall in an elegant, deep purple dress and a discreet pearl necklace. She was beaming. Her words were sweet as honey. "Oh, Emily, you look so happy. From now on, you're the daughter I never had." With that, she took my mother's hand and squeezed it warmly, as if they'd been friends for life. Anyone watching would have nodded in approval. Asterisk. What luck, such an understanding mother-in-law. Asterisk. I nodded too. Because who doesn't want to believe in kindness, especially on their wedding day? During the gift exchange, I felt my hands go cold. The groom's family presented me with the agreed-upon gifts, including a valuable set of heirloom jewelry, a diamond necklace, and matching earrings that had belonged to Jake's grandmother. The diamonds glittered under the lights, heavy on my skin like a testament before both families. My aunts joked, "What a catch, a good husband and a mother-in-law who adores you." I smiled, but my heart was pounding. I didn't dare consider myself lucky. I just hoped for peace. My older brother Chris watched me from a distance. He didn't say much, just gave me a wink. "If you need anything, call me. I know he loves me in his own way, the way of men who don't comfort with words but simply offer you their back to lean on." My best friend Chloe grabbed me for a picture and whispered in my ear, "Remember to keep a clear head, counselor. In this life, even what's written in ink on paper can be disputed. Imagine everything else." I gave her a playful nudge to dismiss it, but her words stuck in my mind. When the party wound down, the two families sat down to talk formally. My parents brought up the marriage license. Since the wedding was right before the Thanksgiving holidays, the county clerk's office had limited hours, so both families had agreed that we'd have the officiant file the paperwork in a few days. I didn't see anything odd about it. I naively thought that with the photos and the testimony of our families, we were already married. The paperwork was just a formality. At that moment, Jake said firmly in front of everyone, "I promise that as soon as we're married, we'll get our own place. We'll manage on our own. I won't let Emily suffer through living in someone else's house." Sharon, his mother, smiled and nodded effusively. "Yes, if that's what the kids have decided, that's fine. As long as they know how to work hard and get ahead." Hearing that, my mother seemed to let out a sigh of relief. My father said only one short sentence that I'll never forget. "Living alone or with family isn't as important as having boundaries. If there are boundaries, the relationship will last." At that moment, I sincerely believed that everything was as clear as a signature at the bottom of a contract. As evening fell, I went with Jake to his parents' house. The street in their neighborhood was wider, lined with two-story brick houses with black iron railings. As we crossed the threshold, I felt a knot in my stomach. Sharon was walking ahead and turned to say, "We're home, honey. From now on, call us Mom and Dad. It feels closer." I nodded, telling myself times, well, if I have to be a daughter-in-law, so be it as long as they care about me. Asterisk. The guest room was prepared with new sheets that smelled of downy. My neck and ears still ached a little from wearing the heavy jewelry all day. Jake looked at me with his kind smile. "Are you tired? Sleep in tomorrow." I laughed. "Sleep in, I'll be happy just to get my 8 hours." Jake scratched his head. "My parents are pretty chill here. Don't worry. There's a saying, seeing is believing." I had believed what I'd heard without having had time to see for myself. On my wedding night, I didn't have any grand dreams. I just thought about the life ahead of me: work, save money, rent a small apartment, cook together, manage on our own. I also thought about how after the holidays we'd go to the county clerk's office and I'd file our marriage license away neatly, like a formal milestone. I lay on my side listening to the ticking of the clock and Jake's steady breathing, feeling a temporary calm. Before turning off the light, I texted my mom. Asterisk. Made it here. Asterisk. Asterisk. Sleep well times? She replied instantly. Asterisk. Okay, if anything happens, tell me right away. Don't keep it to yourself. Asterisk. I looked at the screen and suddenly felt a lump in my throat. I didn't know if it was from emotion or a premonition. I only know that in that moment, I pulled the blanket over me and repeated a very old but very true phrase to myself times. Love who you want, but never let them think you're a pushover. Asterisk. In the yard, the wind rustled through, the trees making the leaves whisper. I closed my eyes, hoping for a deep sleep after such a long day, hoping the morning would be as peaceful as the evening's promises. I had barely managed to fall asleep when I was startled awake by the distant bark of a dog. The clock on the wall glowed faintly. It was past midnight. I turned over and saw Jake still asleep, his mouth slightly open, his face as peaceful as when I first met him. I sighed, trying to calm down. A wedding day is exhausting for anyone. Tomorrow would be another day. The next morning I got up at 7. For me, 7 a.m. was already a huge effort. The wedding day had been a marathon from dawn till dusk, and my legs still felt like I'd climbed 10 flights of stairs. I left the room looking for a glass of water, and saw Sharon already sitting at the dining room table, her hair pulled back, an oddly alert expression on her face. She looked me up and down, smiling. You're up. We get up early here. It's the way of the house. I nodded, trying to maintain a cheerful tone. Just then, Jake came out yawning. Sharon turned to her son, and her voice softened completely. Jake, go wash up and come have breakfast. I warmed up your food. I stood between those two sentences, feeling like both a guest and an employee, unsure which group I belonged to. Breakfast was nothing special, just toast with fried eggs and some bacon, but I noticed how Sharon assigned tasks with her gaze. She didn't say, "Honey, help me out." She just looked at the frying pan, then at the sink, then at me. That look needed no words. Someone with less self-confidence would have jumped up to do things to make a good impression. I don't mind working. What bothers me is the feeling of being taken for granted. Jake finished eating and got up to go back to the room. Sharon said to his back, "Did you explain to your wife that she needs to adjust to our schedule these days? Living together means following common rules." Jake nodded and turned to me with an apologetic smile. "Don't mind my mom, she's just used to doing things her way." I nodded, but a phrase I often use at work echoed in my head times. Custom is not a legal justification for invading another person's boundaries. Asterisk. But I didn't say it. I thought it was my first day, and saying too much would make me seem like a defiant daughter-in-law. Around noon, some of Jake's relatives came to visit. A neighbor also poked her head in the door, smiling. The new bride. Isn't she cute? I smiled and greeted them, feeling a bit uncomfortable, as if my in-laws' house were a stage and I were the main attraction. I don't like being scrutinized like that. Everyone sat down for coffee and talked about the wedding. Someone asked, "Hey, have you filed the marriage license yet?" Jake smiled. "Not yet, Auntie. It's the holidays. We'll go in a few days." Sharon quickly interjected, "Oh, it's just paperwork. The important thing is they're married, they're home, and everyone knows they're husband and wife." The sentence seemed harmless, but it unsettled me because it implied that once the ritual was complete, rights were acquired, and I still didn't understand whose rights those were. In the afternoon, Sharon gave me a tour of the house, a kind of lesson for new daughters-in-law. It was a large house, a spacious living room, a spotless kitchen, everything in its place. She pointed out everything. Plates go here, towels there, trash gets recycled, the floor is mopped every morning. I'm very particular. No offense. I smiled. I understand. Then she asked as if it were nothing. So you're a paralegal? Must be nice to sit at a computer all day, more comfortable than physical labor. I heard the word comfortable and felt uncomfortable. My job doesn't involve heavy lifting, but the pressure is of a different kind. There are days I spend hours with my eyes glued to the screen because one mistake in a clause can cost the company a lot of money. I wanted to explain, but I kept quiet because I know that sometimes people don't ask to understand but to pigeonhole you. At dusk, Jake took me out to the balcony for some fresh air. The Chicago wind wasn't freezing, just crisp. I looked out at the street, listening to the sound of cars, and felt a little calmer. I asked him in a low voice, "You remember your promise about us getting our own place, right?" Jake stroked my hand, his voice firm. "Of course I do. Don't worry. After the holidays, I'll start looking." I looked at him, searching for security in his eyes. Jake was still kind, gentle, but sometimes his gentleness was like water, refreshing, but it could also slip through your fingers at any moment. That night I called my mom. "How are things over there, honey?" she asked. I forced a smile into my voice. "Fine, normal. My mother-in-law is a bit of a neat freak." My mom was silent for a few seconds, then said slowly, "Well, if she's just a neat freak, you can handle that. It's when people are particular about things they shouldn't be that it's a problem." I understood what she meant. "Yeah, Mom," I said softly, and hung up. I stared at the heirloom jewelry tucked away in a velvet pouch inside my suitcase. I hadn't put them on again because they were heavy and felt awkward. I thought that valuable things should be kept safe. But keeping them safe is different from giving them to someone else to keep. I told myself not to worry too much, but then I scolded myself. Asterisk. If you don't worry, who's going to help you when something happens? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Asterisk. I opened my phone and scrolled through the wedding photos. Not out of distrust, but because my profession has taught me one very direct thing: to keep what's yours, you need proof. I turned and saw Jake lying in bed, smiling at something on his phone. I asked, "Are we doing anything tomorrow?" Jake replied, "Tomorrow's a holiday. Stay home and get some more sleep." "Okay," I said. I pulled the blanket over me, trying to fall asleep, but I had a strange feeling as if I were standing in front of a closed door, and behind that door something was waiting for me. It wasn't shouting or a fight, but an invisible rule about to tighten around my neck at any moment, and I had no idea that rule would come knocking at an hour no one would consider normal. The knocking on the door wasn't polite. It was a loud, rhythmic, urgent pounding, as if they would tear it off its hinges if we didn't open it. I shot up in bed, my heart racing. It was still dark outside. Only the faint light from the hallway filtered under the door. I reached for my phone. 4:07 a.m. Only one thought crossed my mind: times there's a fire. Asterisk. Right after Sharon's voice cut through the door, sharp but clear. Get up. Get up and get to the kitchen. Your father has a 6 a.m. tea time and needs breakfast before he goes. The new bride, sleeping in till this hour." I sat there for a second, motionless, not from fear, but from shock. Yesterday at the wedding it was all smiles and promises of loving me like a daughter, and just one night later I was being summoned like a soldier at roll call. I turned to Jake. He was sleeping on his side. I shook him gently. "Jake, wake up. It's your mom." He mumbled. Something pulled the blanket tighter, and said in a sleepy voice, "What's wrong, honey?" The pounding on the door resumed louder this time. And Sharon's next sentence was what made my blood run cold. "Oh, and that heirloom jewelry from yesterday, give it to me so I can keep it safe. You kids are so careless you'll lose it. In this house, I keep it where it's safer. I clutched my phone, feeling as if a stone slab had been placed on my chest. I'm not one to imagine things, but I'm not naive either. Demanding the wedding jewelry, under the pretext of safekeeping at 4 a.m. on the very first day. This was no longer a matter of security. It was a matter of power. I got up and went to the door, but I didn't swing it wide open. I cracked it just a few inches, not because I wanted to be difficult, but because I didn't want the whole hallway to see me in my pajamas, disheveled, woken up by shouting as if I were a servant. Sharon stood there, her eyes sharp, hands on her hips. Her gaze wasn't that of a mother-in-law looking at her new daughter, but of someone about to be broken. I swallowed, trying to maintain my composure. Mom, I'm really tired. It's only 4 a.m. Could I please sleep a little longer? She gave a half smile. At your mother's house, you were used to the good life. Here you have to follow the rules, and these are the rules of this house. Then she pointed a finger at me. Get down to the kitchen and bring out the jewelry so I can put it away. I'm telling you now, so I don't have to repeat myself. I heard the word rules and felt a chill. They say when in Rome, do as the Romans do, but what custom forces someone to hand over their assets as if they were the house keys? I kept my voice calm, but this time, I didn't back down. Mom, I'll help in the kitchen, but the jewelry, please let me keep it myself. I'm a grown woman, and I know how to take care of my things. The atmosphere froze. I saw Sharon's pupils constrict, as if my keep it myself had been a slap in the face. What did you say? She lowered her voice, but her tone was even more intimidating. The jewelry that comes into this house belongs to this house. What's wrong with me keeping it? I felt my throat go dry. That sentence wasn't casual. It was a declaration of intent. I turned and went back into the room without continuing the argument in the hallway. Some conversations, if you have them on the threshold, are like putting yourself on an operating table to be dissected. I went to the bed and shook Jake harder. Jake, wake up now. Your mother is demanding I give her the wedding jewelry for her to keep. Jake opened his eyes and looked at me for a few seconds, as if he didn't understand. I didn't give him a chance to stay groggy. I told him slowly and clearly I'm serious. Your mother wants the jewelry right now. Jake shot up his hair, a mess. A look of bewilderment on his face. I pulled him up and led him to the door. I opened it a little wider so he could see his mother standing there with his own eyes so he would know I wasn't making it up. Jake looked at his mother, his voice still thick with sleep. Mom, why are you waking us up at this hour? Sharon turned sharply on her son, her tone a mix of scolding and lecturing. This is the time to get up and get to work. You bring a wife home for her to sleep like this is a hotel. Besides, it's normal for me to keep the jewelry. A new bride doesn't know how to look after valuable things. Jake flustered. Looked from me to his mother, and as I feared, he chose the path of least resistance. Well, let Mom keep it, then we'll know it's safe. It's no big deal, Emily. I felt as if someone had switched off a light inside me. Not because of the sentence itself, but because of the, it's no big deal, he said, as if it were obvious, as if my resistance was a mistake. I looked at Jake. My voice was still low, but now it was cold. You say it's no big deal. So whose jewelry is it? Ours or your mother's? Jake opened his mouth to say something but fell silent. He looked at his mother as if for instructions. Sharon intervened immediately, not giving him time to think. If it's yours, then I'll keep it for you. I'm not going to take it. Don't be scared. No one steals from anyone in this house. I didn't smile, but inside I laughed at a common thought times. If no one steals, why do you have to snatch things away? Times I held back my response. I knew arguing with someone like that was a waste of time. I simply set a boundary with a clear, polite, but definitive sentence. Mom, thank you, but I'm not going to give them to you. The jewelry is our property, Jake's and mine, and I will be the one to keep it. When we decide to put it in a bank or a safe, we will make that decision ourselves. Sharon's face turned red. She took a step forward, raising her voice. A brand new daughter-in-law, and you're already talking to me like a lawyer. No one here needs your lectures. I heard the word lawyer with a bitter taste. I'm a paralegal. I'm used to clauses. It's true. But I wasn't using the law to intimidate anyone. I was just protecting what was mine. They say it's better to face the music once than to live in constant fear. Giving in on this meant giving in until I had no right to exist. Frank, my father-in-law, came out of his room drying his face with a towel, annoyed at being woken up. He looked at the three of us and uttered a sentence that was like a final seal. What's all this racket so early? The bride should be doing her chores and the jewelry should be kept by her mother-in-law. It's always been that way in this house. I turned to him and greeted him with due respect. "Good morning, Dad. With all due respect, I'm not arguing, I'm simply stating that I will not hand them over." Frank snorted as if I had just committed a heinous crime. Jake, in the middle of it all, was pale. He grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Emily, just let it go. Let my mom keep them so there's peace." I gently but firmly pulled my hand away. I looked at Jake, no longer calling him with affection. I used his name as if to re-establish a distance. "Jake, you promised we would get our own place. You promised I wouldn't have to live in a house with rules that crush people. And now you're here telling me to let it go. What does that mean?" Jake was speechless. Sharon immediately jumped in, blocking her son with her gaze, and then addressed me. "Getting your own place or not, we'll see about that after the holidays. A newlywed couple with so many demands. Are you trying to break up this family?" I heard the word break and almost laughed. I haven't even had time to build a single day. What was I going to break? I stood up straight, took a deep breath, and said my final sentence in that conversation. "No, I don't want to break anything or cause a scene. With your permission, I'm going back to sleep. I am keeping the jewelry. And as for getting our own place, I'll talk to Jake about it in the morning." I turned, went into the room, and closed the door. Not locked, but closed with determination. Behind me, I could hear Sharon's complaints, Frank's muttering, and Jake's sigh. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling slightly. I wasn't trembling from fear, but from rage. The rage of someone who has just realized they've walked into a game where they didn't set the rules. Jake stood there looking at me, an expression on his face that indicated he was finally wide awake. He opened his mouth. "You're going too far, Emily." I didn't cry. I just looked at him and said slowly, "I'm not going too far. I'm making things clear. Whether this goes too far or not depends on how hard everyone else wants to push." With that, I got back into bed, but I couldn't sleep. It was still dark outside. Inside, there was silence. And in that silence, what I heard most clearly wasn't the echo of the pounding on the door, but the sound of a boundary I had just erected within myself, dry and sharp like the edge of a broken piece of glass. The moment the bedroom door closed, I leaned against it for a second, as if to make sure it was still standing. My hands were freezing. I didn't know if it was from the cold of the night or the feeling of being cornered, treated like an object that had just been brought home and now had to be handed over. Jake was a few feet away from me, not daring to sit on the bed. He looked at me with restless eyes, the typical look of someone who knows they're wrong but doesn't have the courage to side with what's right. "What's wrong, Emily?" he began in a low voice. "It's the first day. Don't be like this. My mom is just worried." I heard the word worried and let out a dry, soundless laugh, just a twitch of my lips. "Worried about what, Jake?" I asked slowly, as if reading a clause. "That I'll lose the jewelry or that I'll keep it," Jake frowned. "What are you talking about? My mom is an older woman. She's keeping it so we can have peace of mind." I went to my suitcase and opened it, not to take out the jewelry, but to show Jake that it was there, safely stored under my control, not just lying around as he implied. I closed the suitcase and turned to him. "Do I look like a 3-year-old to you, Jake?" Flustered stammered. "No, but my mom has always been in charge of this house." I cut him off, keeping my voice calm. "Every house has its customs, but since yesterday, I've only seen one thing. Everything is governed by. It's always been this way. While your promises are left for, we'll see." Jake started. He tried to speak, but I didn't let him escape with a, "Don't overthink it." I pulled up a chair, sat down, and motioned for him to sit across from me. "Sit. Let's be clear. You promised we'd get our own place. You said it in front of both our families. Where is that promise now?" Jake scratched his head, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Well, after the holidays, I'll talk to my parents. You know that." Hearing "I'll talk to my parents," an alarm went off in my head. I asked, emphasizing each word, "So our decisions as a couple depend on your parents' approval?" Jake looked up and quickly denied it. "It's not approval, it's just, we live together. We have to show some respect." I leaned toward him, my voice flat but sharp. "Respect has limits. I came here as your wife, not as an employee under your mother's command." Jake fell silent. His silence infuriated me more than his mother's shouting, because I had her figured out. She wanted power. But Jake wanted peace at my expense. I took a deep breath. "Jake, I'm asking you directly. When your mother was at the door demanding the jewelry and you said, 'Let Mom keep it so we know it's safe,' did you understand what that sentence meant?" Jake replied in a low voice, "It means she keeps it. It's no big deal." I nodded, as if accepting a verdict. It is a big deal, a very big deal. It means you agree with your mother making decisions about our marital assets. It means my boundaries don't matter to you. Jake turned pale. You're being harsh. I just wanted peace in the house. I looked at him, speaking even more slowly. You want peace. But that peace means I have to shut up, hand over the jewelry, and go down to the kitchen at 4 inches the morning. Right? Jake didn't answer, just sighed. That sigh was like adding fuel to the fire. At that exact moment there was another knock on the door. Not as insistent as before, but enough to remind me I hadn't escaped. Sharon's voice seeped through the door. Are you two just going to hide in there until morning? Jake jumped up as if pulled by a string. I stopped him with my hand. Wait, stay here. I'll handle this. Jake looked at me frightened. Emily, no. I opened the door. Sharon was there with her arms crossed. Behind her, Frank, his brow furrowed as if I had ruined his precious sleep. Sharon pointed at me. New bride. I tell you one thing and you don't listen. What are you trying to do? Lecture us in our own house, politely, I said. No, Mom, I'm not trying to lecture. I'm just stating clearly that I am not handing over the jewelry. Sharon let out a dismissive laugh. You're not handing it over. Then why did you bring it to this house? Did you think we don't know how to keep track of things here? I saw Jake behind his mother, his head down. I knew that if he didn't speak up at the right moment, I would be labeled the impertinent daughter-in-law. I chose my words with the same care I choose clauses in a contract. The jewelry is mine and Jake's property. I respect my in-laws, but ownership doesn't change because of a family custom. If you want me to trust you, I will trust in your affection. As for our assets, with your permission, I will manage them. Frank snorted and said in a grave voice, a girl who just arrived talking like a politician. No one is going to steal from you in this house, but a daughter-in-law needs to know how to obey. I addressed him, maintaining respect. Yes, sir. I will obey what is reasonable. Handing over my jewelry is not. Sharon moved a step closer, her eyes wide. With that rebellious attitude, how are we supposed to live together? You come here to follow the rules. Get up early, prepare meals, be discreet at night. We don't support freeloaders in this house. I heard the word freeloaders and felt a deep bitterness. I work, I earn my own money. I make payments on my car. I don't live off anyone, but I didn't list my merits. I just said one sentence enough for her to understand I wasn't easily intimidated. I'm not a freeloader. I simply don't accept absurd orders. Sharon, as if a raw nerve had been touched, slammed her hand on the doorframe. Absurd, I'm the one who's right here. That sentence made me understand something else. For her, right and wrong didn't matter. What mattered was power. She wanted me to bow my head from the start so that in the future I would have to obey anything she ordered. It was then that Jake mumbled, Mom, leave it. We'll talk about it. Sharon turned sharply to her son. You keep quiet. I'm doing this for your own good. Listen to me. Don't let your wife control you. I looked at Jake. My gaze was no longer pleading. It was a final test. Asterisk, whose side are you on times? Jake swallowed and said the words that broke me inside. Emily, just listen to my mom a little. We just got here. I didn't get angry all at once. I just felt a click inside me like the bolt of a door sliding shut. I turned to Sharon, my voice calm, almost cold. Mom, I'll say it one more time so it's clear. I am not handing over the jewelry, and I am not going down to the kitchen at 4 inches the morning just because it's the rule. I am your daughter-in-law, not your servant. Frank growled. Then what did you come here for? Jake flinched because his father had used a dismissive tone. I flinched too, not from fear, but because I had just seen the true face behind the I'll love you like a daughter mask. I answered without stooping to their level. I came to be Jake's wife. If I'm considered something else here, then with your permission I won't stay. Sharon was speechless. Jake turned pale. What are you saying, Emily? Don't say that. I looked at Jake slowly. You ask me to give in, but giving in like this is allowing my boundaries to be taken from me. If I give in today, they will demand more tomorrow. There's a saying, give them an inch and they'll take a mile. I don't want to become that person. There was a silence for several seconds. I could clearly hear the hum of the ceiling fan. Sharon, as if not believing I dared to say I wouldn't stay, recovered her voice and switched to a falsely sweet tone. Now, honey. I'm just saying this because I care. Come on, give me the jewelry. I'll put it in the safe, and when you need it, I'll give it to you. I looked at her. I clearly saw the change in tone, but I also saw it wasn't out of affection, but to achieve her goal. I shook my head. No. Sharon's voice hardened again, sharp as a knife. No, well, from now on, don't complain. What a daughter-in-law. I didn't let her finish. I closed the door not to defy her but to stop the whirlwind that was trying to drag me in. Jake came into the room stunned. If you do that, my mom's going to be really angry. I sat on the bed and looked at him. Jake, listen to me carefully. I'm not afraid of your mother getting angry. What I'm most afraid of is living a life where I always have to be afraid of others getting angry just to be at peace. Jake fell silent. I knew this conversation wasn't going anywhere for the moment, but I also knew I had reached a point of no return. I could no longer just smile and let it go. I opened my phone and sent a message to Chloe. Asterisk. If anything happens, save the evidence for me. Asterisk. Then I took a picture of my suitcase where the pouch with the jewelry was still intact. I did all this quickly and quietly. My profession taught me that in the face of a potential conflict, evidence comes first. I put my phone aside and looked out the window. It was still dark, but in the distance I could see a thin line of light like a thread. I suddenly thought that every dawn begins with a small ray of light. My boundaries were also being built in the darkness, but they would lead me out of it. As soon as it began to get light, the house filled with small noises, the bathroom door, running water, the shuffle of slippers down the hall. I hadn't been able to sleep. My eyes were dry and my body was exhausted, but my mind was painfully awake as if an internal alarm clock wouldn't stop ringing, reminding me I was in the wrong place. Jake lay beside me, his back to me. He wasn't sleeping deeply either. Every now and then his shoulders would tense like someone pretending to be asleep to avoid talking. I stared at his back for a while, then said in a low but clear voice, Jake, turn around. He didn't move. I didn't shout, just repeated, this time more firmly, Jake, I'm talking to you. He sighed and turned over. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. He didn't look at me directly. His gaze wandered over the ceiling. What else do you want, he asked, his tone a mix of tired and irritated. The word else hit me like a bucket of cold water. Newlyweds are supposed to speak to each other with affection, not with a, what else do you want, as if I were the problem. I stayed calm, and spoke as if I were presenting a case in a meeting. Answer, one question for me. When your mother demanded the jewelry, whose side were you on? Jake frowned. This again. My mother is older. She worries about us. Don't you get it? I cut him off, not letting him hide behind the word worries. I asked you whose side you were on. Jake was speechless. After a moment he said in a low voice, I was on the side of peace in the house. I let out a laugh, but this time, it was a bitter one. I looked at him. Peace in the house means I have to put up with everything, right? Jake sat up, starting to get annoyed. What kind of talk is that? You just got to this house and you're already causing a scene. People are going to judge you. My mother is right. What's the problem with her keeping the jewelry? I looked at Jake and saw something very clearly. It wasn't that he believed his mother was right. He just believed his mother was stronger, and he chose to side with the stronger person to avoid confronting her. I continued asking slowly, You promised we'd get our own place. Do you still remember that? He answered quickly, as if he'd memorized it. Yes, but we have to wait. Don't pressure me. I nodded. I didn't argue further about waiting because I understood that in this house waiting was their way of pulling you into their dynamic. One day you wake up and you've been living like that for years, not knowing how. I sat up straight and said something that sounded cold even to me. I'm not pressuring you. I just need you to be clear. If you won't protect your wife's boundaries, I will do it myself. Jake looked at me like a stranger and muttered, You sound like you're at work, not in a home. Hearing that, I didn't get angry. I just felt sad. Asterisk, if I don't act like I'm at work, they'll devour me. Everyone here has their rules. If I don't have mine, I lose. Asterisk, Jake fell silent and turned his back on me again as if to end the conversation. That silence was the final answer for me. He was not willing to stand by my side as soon as the first problem arose. Past 6 a.m., Sharon's voice echoed from downstairs, no longer polite but like a command. Jake, come down for breakfast, and the bride, she should come down too. We need to talk. I saw Jake get up quickly, wash his face, and say something to me that made me want to laugh. Try to be a little softer. Don't offend my mother. I didn't reply, just looked at him for a second. A piece of my mother's advice echoed in my head, times. Being soft at the right time is smart. Being soft at the wrong time is foolish. Asterisk. I went downstairs, not to be soft, but to see what role they had prepared for me. The living room was already lit. Frank was sitting in the main armchair with a cup of coffee in his hand, his face impassive. Sharon was sitting opposite him, her back straight, a look on her face that suggested she had a whole speech prepared. I greeted my in-laws with due respect. "Good morning, Dad." "Good morning, Mom." Sharon didn't reply immediately. She scanned me from head to toe before saying daughters-in-law from other families are respectful when they arrive. "On your first day, you're already a rebel." "Who raised you like this?" I kept my tone neutral. "My parents taught me to be respectful and also to maintain my boundaries." Frank slammed his cup on the table. "Boundaries? What boundaries? When you come to your husband's house, you follow your husband's rules. Don't bring your house's customs here." I looked at him, not getting into an argument about his house versus mine, and focused on the issue. "Yes, sir. I will follow the rules of cohabitation, but our assets, with your permission, we will manage as a couple." Sharon let out a mocking laugh with a sudden suspicious sweetness. "Oh, you speak so well. Manage your assets. And why do you want to keep the jewelry yourself, so that if something happens you can just grab it and run back to your parents' house?" That sentence was like a pinprick, straight to my honor. I saw Jake tense up beside me, but he remained silent. I understood. This was the script they had prepared, sow doubt, and paint me as a gold digger. I didn't blush or defend myself with a long speech. I just replied concisely, "I'm not running anywhere. I'm just keeping what belongs to our marriage." Sharon tilted her head, feigning concern. Girls these days talk a lot, but who knows what they're really thinking. I'm telling you, I'm older, and I have experience with people. With a hard attitude like that, you're going to have a rough life. I heard you're going to have a rough life, and felt a chill. It was a veiled but clear warning. If I didn't submit, they would make my life impossible. I looked at Jake, who had his head down. I asked him directly in front of his parents without beating around the bush. "Jake, say one thing. Who do you want to keep the jewelry?" Jake started, looked at his mother, his father, and then mumbled, "Well, let my mom keep it so there's peace." I nodded, not to show agreement but to register the fact. In this family meeting, my voice was in the minority. I turned to Sharon, still respectful but firm. "Mom, I heard him, but I'm still not handing it over. You may be angry with me, but I'm not going to surrender my property out of fear of an argument." Frank raised his voice. "Is that how you talk to your in-laws?" I took a deep breath. I didn't respond to his tone because doing so would be falling into their trap. I just said slowly and clearly, as if closing the minutes of a meeting. "With your permission, I am not going to argue. I stand by my decision." Sharon jumped up, her voice shrill. "You see. What kind of daughter-in-law did my son marry? She just got here, and she's already disrespecting us. Of course, with the gold in her hands, it's gone to her head." I looked at her with a calmness that surprised even me. I didn't retaliate with hurtful words. I just thought of a fitting proverb times, people's tongues are like knives. As soon as they speak, they cut. Asterisk. And I understood, they were sharpening that knife on my honor. I turned to Jake and said in a low voice but loud enough for him to hear, "Did you hear your mother? If something happens tomorrow, they'll say, 'I ran off with the jewelry.' And I will not accept that." Jake opened his mouth to say something but fell silent. I didn't wait any longer. I turned and went straight up to my room. There I did something very specific. I opened the notes app on my phone and wrote down a timeline of events from the night before, who said what at what time where. I didn't write it to speak ill of them but to protect myself. My profession has taught me to analyze the sequence of events. I understand that by changing just one detail they could twist the story against me. I also checked that the pouch with the jewelry was still in the suitcase. I didn't open it to count them, just confirmed it was still in its place. I made a mental note times, this property will be their target, and also the weapon they'll use to invent stories about me. Asterisk. I sat on the edge of the bed looking out the window. The sun was already shining brightly, but inside me, everything was dark. I wanted peace, but this family was not going to give it to me, and I knew that if I didn't build a barrier myself, they would come into my life and turn everything upside down. And on top of that, they would expect me to thank them for worrying about me. I got up and got dressed in comfortable clothes, not to go down and apologize, but to prepare for the next steps as lucidly as possible, like someone who no longer believes in family peace. After getting dressed, I stood for a moment looking at myself in the mirror. My face wasn't that of a newlywed but of someone who had just woken up from a fall. I had dark circles under my eyes from not sleeping. I patted my cheeks, telling myself to stay calm. Asterisk. In life, anger is the bait others use to lure you into their trap. Asterisk. I carefully closed the bedroom door and locked it, not to prevent someone from forcing their way in, but to give myself a few minutes to breathe. The first thing I did wasn't open the suitcase. I grabbed my wallet, took out all my personal documents, driver's license, credit cards, health insurance card, and put them in a small crossbody bag. I kept close. I did it slowly, one by one. My profession has given me a peculiar habit. What's important must be under my control, not within anyone's reach. I opened my phone, reviewed the timeline I had written, and saved a screenshot in a private folder. I also sent a copy to Chloe with a short message, "Save this for me." She replied instantly. "Got it. I'm here for you." A simple message, and I felt so much less alone. It's true that you find out who's on your side when you're in trouble. I looked at the suitcase. It sat there like an unanswered question. I opened it not to rummage through everything, but to reorganize it according to my needs. Clothes, in one corner, toiletries in another. My phone charger, headphones, and car keys. I put them in the outer pocket so that if something happened, I would just have to pull the zipper and leave. When my fingers touched the pouch with the jewelry, I paused for a second. I didn't take them out to count them or lay them on the bed. I simply put the pouch inside a cloth bag and hid it at the bottom of a backpack under a jacket. Not to hide it, but so that no one walking in suddenly could see me and scream, "She's planning to run off with the gold. Life is strange." Owning your own assets isn't as dangerous as the label people put on it. They wanted to turn me into a gold digger, so I had to eliminate any opportunity for them to spin their story. From downstairs, I could hear the clinking of dishes and the squeaking of chairs. Sharon's voice drifted up at intervals distant. I couldn't tell who she was talking to, but I recognized the tone. It was the tone of someone complaining, lamenting, and casually dropping hints that the new daughter-in-law is a rebel. I stood still listening like someone hearing a weather forecast because I knew that if the storm had already formed, I shouldn't go outside. My phone vibrated. A text from Jake. Asterisk. "Come down and talk to my mom. She's really upset." Asterisk. I read it and didn't reply. I stared at the message for a moment and put the phone down. I suddenly understood a very familiar type of anger, the anger that doesn't seek a solution but forces the other person to give in. I replied with a single sentence, "Times. When you're ready to state clearly whose jewelry it is, I'll come down." Asterisk. Jake didn't answer. Silence. His usual silence. I let out a soft laugh this time, not so bitter but like someone who has just put an end to an expectation. They say you should choose a husband as carefully as you choose gold. Had I chosen well, or had I only been drawn to a kind appearance, I didn't dwell on it. I activated the voice recorder on my phone, recorded a short clip to check that the microphone was working, and turned it off. I hated having to do these things, but I hated even more the idea of being falsely accused with nothing to defend myself. As they say, words can be forgotten, but proof remains. I opened the door and peeked into the hallway. No one was there. I went down the stairs silently. From the foyer, I headed toward the garage. I saw my car. I checked the trunk. Everything was in its place. I sighed with relief. Just as I turned around, Frank came out of the living room. Seeing me, he stopped. He looked at me coldly, a look that needed no words to apply pressure. A daughter-in-law sneaking around. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low but heavy. I remained respectful. "I came down for some water." Frank gave a half-smile. "For water or to plan your escape back to your parents' house?" That sentence was an invisible slap. I clutched the strap of my bag, but my voice remained steady. "I'm not planning anything. I just want some peace." He let out a dismissive laugh. "If you want peace, obey your mother-in-law. In this house, what she says goes." I didn't argue. I just looked at him calmly. "Yes, sir. I will listen to what is reasonable." Frank took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You're a new bride. Don't let people laugh at us. A big wedding just for you, to cause this scene." I heard the word laugh, and understood everything. They were afraid of losing face of what people would say, and precisely because of that fear they would try to control me even more so I couldn't make a sound. What irony. They created the problem, and then demanded my silence to save their reputation. I nodded without replying. I walked around him and went back up to the room. I needed a place with a closed door, with time with the right to breathe. As soon as I was inside, I called my mom. I got straight to the point. Mom, things have happened here. I want to come home for a bit. My mom didn't bombard me with questions. She just asked one. Are you okay? Are you sure? A lump formed in my throat, but I answered. Yes. My mom said slowly. Then come. You'll always have an open door at home. But remember, whatever you do, always have an exit strategy and proof. Don't let them falsely accuse you with a single word. I closed my eyes. The phrase falsely accuse hurt, but it hurt because it was true. Okay, I said and hung up. I stood up and put the backpack on. I didn't leave the house immediately. I checked everything one last time. Documents on me, phone charged, keys in hand, the pouch of jewelry at the bottom of the backpack, and most importantly, a clear head. I opened the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. This time, my steps were firm. I understood that if I stayed without boundaries, they would wear me down day by day. They didn't need to hit me. They just needed to force me to live by their rules and call it custom. Before going down the stairs, I paused for a moment and looked back at the door of the guest room. I didn't feel sorry for leaving it, but for the naive trust I had felt the day before. But well, you learn from your mistakes. The important thing was that I hadn't let anyone take away the most valuable things, my dignity and my right to choose. I had my backpack on and the car keys in my hand, but I stopped on the top step. Not out of fear, but because I suddenly remembered my father's words. Time's boundaries must be made clear. Ambiguity only brings trouble. Asterisk. If I left in silence the next day, they would just have to say, she took the gold and ran off to her parents' house, and that would be enough. In this life, people are quicker to believe a scandal than a reasonable explanation, and I couldn't live with that reputation. I put my backpack on the floor and took out my phone. I didn't activate the camera right away. I checked the battery, opened the video app, recorded a few seconds, and deleted it. I reminded myself that the recording had to be continuous, and the sound clear. This wasn't a show for social media. It was my armor. I unzipped the backpack and took out the pouch with the jewelry. My hands weren't shaking, but they were cold. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the pouch, and looked at the diamond pieces. Their sparkle wasn't dazzling, but heavy like a responsibility. I placed them in a small box lined with tissue paper, not for theatrics, but so that when I handed them over, I could account for them clearly, without anything falling out, and without anyone being able to say something was missing. Once everything was ready, I took a deep breath and left the room. The staircase in my in-laws' house was immaculate. Every step gleamed, but the cleanliness of its owners' hearts was another story. I walked down slowly, hearing the low volume of the TV in the living room. Sharon had probably turned it on to create a sense of normalcy, but I knew it was the calm before the storm. I entered the living room. Frank was sitting in the main armchair with a cup of tea. Sharon beside him looked at me like a rebel who needed to be tamed. Jake was near the door, pale, nervously wringing his hands. I placed the box with the jewelry on the coffee table in plain sight. Then I raised my phone to chest level and started recording. The screen clearly showed the scene, my face and theirs. I spoke slowly and clearly, without raising my voice or shedding a tear. I am Emily. Today, in front of my in-laws and Jake, I want to make it clear that I am returning the entirety of the heirloom jewelry that the groom's family gave me yesterday. It is a diamond necklace and a pair of matching earrings. I am returning everything. I am keeping absolutely nothing. Sharon shot up when she saw I was recording. She tried to snatch the phone from my hand. What the hell are you doing? Turn that off. I took a step back, holding the phone firmly. Without losing my composure, I said, Mom, I am recording this as proof. I am returning the jewelry honorably, so that no one can accuse me of anything. Frank grumbled. This is a family matter. What's with the recording? Are you trying to humiliate us? I looked at him respectfully. I don't want to humiliate anyone, only to protect myself. I am returning everything so that in the future, no one can say I ran off with the family jewels. Hearing the phrase ran off with the family jewels, Sharon's face twitched for an instant, but she quickly regained her composure. For God's sake, who said you took them? You're just imagining things and starting to record. What kind of daughter-in-law are you? I didn't argue about who had said it. I opened the box and placed each piece of jewelry on the table in front of the camera. 1 necklace, 2 earrings. It's all here. I focused on each piece up close, and then panned out for a wide shot. I did it methodically, as if taking inventory. Jake approached, his voice trembling. Emily, this is really weird. What are people going to think? I turned to him and looked him straight in the eye. What are people going to think, or what is your mother going to think? Whose respect are you afraid of losing, Jake? He was speechless. I didn't wait for his answer. I gently pushed the box toward Sharon. Here you are. From now on, if you want to keep them, you keep them. I have nothing to do with it. Sharon didn't take it immediately. She looked at the jewelry, then at me with a mixture of greed and rage. She said, almost hissing, "You're returning it for what? To throw it in our faces so everyone can see you're the victim." I gave a slight nod and told the truth. I am returning it to put an end to this. I don't want to live in a house where I'm woken up at 4 a.m. to be demanded to hand over my jewelry at my bedroom door. I cannot accept that. Jake flinched and glanced at his mother. Sharon denied it instantly. I didn't demand anything from you. I offered to keep it for you. I kept my tone even. You call it keeping. But I clearly heard the phrase, "The jewelry that comes into this house belongs to this house." I also heard, "I'm the one who's right here. I cannot consider that a favor." Frank slammed his hand on the table. The teacup rattled. A new bride and already so impertinent. What do you think this house is? I felt a lump in my throat, but I didn't respond to his dismissive tone. I just said one last sentence like a final seal. With all due respect, I am not being impertinent. I am just telling the truth and returning what was given to me. Suddenly, Sharon changed her tune, becoming compassionate. Come on, honey, don't do this. After such a beautiful wedding, if you go back to your parents' house, what will they say about Jake? Aren't you thinking about your husband? I looked at her. I saw her strategy clearly use love for a husband as a rope to tie me down. I answered concisely. I think about Jake, but Jake also has to think about me. If in a partnership only one has to give in, that's not love. Jake came closer and tried to take my hand. I pulled it away gently, but firmly. I was still recording. Not to humiliate anyone, but so no one could manipulate my story. I took a small note I had written in a hurry out of my pocket. Asterisk. Received the wedding jewelry returned by Emily in its entirety. Asterisk. I placed it on the table. Please could you sign this receipt? I want to leave everything clear. Sharon's eyes widened. Sign? What do you think, this is a police station? I nodded. I'm a paralegal. I'm used to clarity. They say words are fleeting, but at least paper leaves a record. I'm asking you, please. Frank snorted and turned away. Jake, caught in the middle, didn't know what to do. I didn't force them to sign. I just focused the camera on the paper and said clearly, if you don't want to sign, that's fine. I have recorded everything. I am returning the jewelry in full. I am not taking anything at all. With that, I closed the box, left it right in front of Sharon, and took a step back. I stopped the camera, but I didn't delete the video. I immediately saved it and sent a copy to Chloe in seconds, like someone locking the door before leaving the house. It was then that Sharon lunged for the box and clutched it like a treasure, cursing me under her breath. So clever, aren't you? You think you've won because you recorded it. Go on, run to your parents. We'll see. I looked at her without fear. I just felt pity for the mouth that the day before had said she would love me like a daughter. There's a saying times, a saint's words in the mouth, a dagger in the heart. Asterisk. I didn't want to believe it, but that day I saw it. Jake followed me to the door. Emily, calm down. Go wherever you want, but don't make a scene. I turned and looked him in the eyes, my voice low but heavy. Jake, whether this is a scene or not doesn't depend on my mouth. It depends on whether a husband dares to defend his wife. I opened the door and walked out. The morning sun reflected off the pavement. I took a deep breath as if I had just left a room without oxygen. I knew that from the moment I had placed the jewelry on the table and recorded everything, there was no turning back. I could no longer give in to keep the peace. I got in my car and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I watched the house of my in-laws grow smaller. I didn't cry. I just felt my heart become lighter, because at least I had saved something important. The truth was in my hands, not in the mouths of others. After driving for a while, I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers had gone numb. The morning wind hit my face cool but sharp. The sting wasn't from the wind, but from having left a place I once thought I would call home. I pulled over to the side of the road, took out my phone, and re-watched the video I had just recorded. Not for pleasure, but to make sure everything was saved. Image sound faces the exact moment. My job has trained me to focus on details. A single cut in the audio, and they could accuse me of manipulation. I watched it once, locked the file, and sent another copy to my personal email. A professional habit that at that moment was my shield. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Jake was calling. I didn't answer. Sharon was calling. Even less of a chance. I knew that when people are angry, any word becomes ammunition for them. I wasn't going to be that naive. I arrived at my parents' house around 10 a.m. As soon as I opened the door, my mother was already at the threshold. She didn't ask why I was back. She just looked at my face, ushered me inside, and said in a low but firm voice, "Come in first. Have some water." My father was sitting in the living room with the newspaper on his lap, but he wasn't reading. He looked at me once without reproach or hasty questions, just with the look of someone who already guessed part of the story. I suddenly felt a lump in my throat, but I didn't let myself cry. I knew I needed to be clear-headed now. I opened my backpack, took out my documents, and placed them on the table, and then picked up my phone. "Dad, Mom, listen to me in order. Don't get upset." My mother nodded. My father too. I began to tell the story chronologically, without adding or subtracting anything, without complaining, just the facts. From the pounding on the door at 4 a.m., the demand to go to the kitchen, the request for the jewelry. Jake's phrase, "Let Mom keep it so we know it's safe," to the scene where I returned the heirlooms in the living room and recorded everything. When I finished, I showed them the video. My mother watched, gripping the edge of the table. My father's face was as serious as a stone. When it got to the part where Frank spoke to me with contempt, my father let out a very slight sigh, but it sounded like a hammer hitting the table. My mother turned to me and asked just one thing. "Did you bring anything from their house?" I shook my head. "No. I returned everything. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine." My father nodded. "Then, you're fine." That, "you're fine," from my father wasn't praise. It was a confirmation that I was still a person of integrity. In this life, you can be poor, you can make mistakes, but you can't let them label you as dishonest. Honor is more important than wealth. I understood that then. Chloe video called me. I answered. As soon as she saw my face, she said, "You sent the video. I've saved it in 3 different places. Don't worry. By the way, it seems like they're not going to stay quiet over there." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Jake just messaged me asking for your mom's number, and some random person added me on Facebook asking if it's true you ran off with the family jewels. This doesn't smell right." I heard "ran off with the family jewels" and felt a shiver. Just as I had predicted, since they couldn't keep the jewelry, they would keep the gossip. My mother, who was beside me, overheard and turned pale. My father let out a bitter laugh and said, "Conclusion. When someone wants to tarnish your name, if they can't do it one way, they'll try another." I sat up straight. I knew the time had come to activate total self-defense mode. I opened the voice recorder on my phone and tested it again. I wasn't planning to post it on social media immediately. I just wanted every call from now on that involved a threat, an insult, or a lie to be recorded. Just then, my phone rang. An unknown number. I looked at my mother, then my father. My father nodded. "Answer it." I pressed the answer button and activated the recording. "Emily." Sharon's voice sounded sour. "You're very clever. Just arrived and you're already making videos. Do you want to humiliate this family?" I remained calm. "No, Mom. I only recorded it to prove I returned the jewelry, so no one could accuse me of anything." Sharon let out a dismissive laugh. "Accuse you? You're already accused. Do you think you're clean just by running back to your mother's house? People are asking me, and I'm telling the truth. A new bride who runs away from home. How do you want people to see Jake? I listened to every word." I didn't argue. I just asked, "So are you telling me you're going to tell that version to other people?" Sharon grumbled. "I'm telling the truth. You returned the gold, yes. But don't think that's the end of it. A girl who does that. Who's going to marry you after this? You've already crossed the threshold of my house." I couldn't listen anymore, not out of shame, but out of the disgust I felt seeing an adult use a woman's honor as a weapon to attack people. I gripped the phone, but my voice didn't break. "Mom, with your permission, I'm going to hang up. If you continue to insult my honor, I will take legal action." Sharon was silent for a second, then exploded. "Legal action? Are you threatening me with lawyers?" "I'm not threatening you. I'm just warning you not to go too far." I hung up. The recording was saved. I immediately sent it to Chloe and my brother Chris. I didn't want anyone in my family to have to hear rumors and then have to deny them. My father stood up. "From now on, don't answer unknown numbers. If something happens, we'll handle it. If we have to talk to them, it will be during the day in person and with witnesses. My mother sighed. I don't want a scandal, but I'm not going to let them trample on my daughter. I nodded. My family wasn't the type to enjoy shouting matches, but they weren't the type to bow their heads either. I couldn't eat lunch that day. My mother brought me a bowl of hot soup. Eat a little, honey. You need strength to think. I ate a couple of spoonfuls and then sat down with my parents to plan the next steps. I made it clear to them that I had the video of the jewelry return, the recording of the last call, and a complete timeline. My parents agreed. No arguing on social media or exchanging insults with them. We would arrange a formal meeting to set clear boundaries and demand they stop the defamation. In the afternoon, Chris arrived. As soon as he walked in, he asked, "What did they do to you?" I showed him the video and played the recording. When it finished, his face darkened. He didn't slam the table or shout, but his voice was cold. To talk about a woman like that, they're trying to destroy your reputation. I nodded. I also understood that in this story the money was just an excuse. What they really wanted was power. The power to command, to subjugate, to make me the guilty one. Chris looked at me. Stay calm, but remember, if you've come this far, don't stop halfway. If you're going to tell the truth, you have to defend it. I looked at him and felt stronger. I didn't want a war, but I wasn't going to let them put me on public display to sell my honor to the highest bidder. That night, lying in my old bed at my parents' house, the ceiling fan spun and the street noise was the same as always. But my life was not the same. My phone was silent, but I knew that silence was just the prelude to the roar of gossip. And when it started, it wouldn't ask what was right or wrong, it would just ask, "Hey, is it true that Michael's daughter ran off with the wedding gold?" I closed my eyes and told myself, all right, let them talk, but talking will have a price. The next morning, my father called Jake directly without beating around the bush. He scheduled a meeting for 10 a.m. at our house. He made it clear it was to clarify things, not to argue. Jake stammered, and a short while later sent a text. Asterisk, I'll come with my parents. Asterisk, I wasn't nervous about being afraid, but about hearing more insults. Chris warned me. You sit next to Mom and don't argue. Let the older folks talk. If they cross the line, I'll step in. Do they think our sister has no one to defend her? I prepared my phone with a full battery and the recorder ready. I didn't want to do it secretly, but I also didn't want them to tell a different version of the meeting afterward. At 10 a.m. sharp, a car pulled up in front of the door. I looked out the window and saw Frank get out first, looking disgruntled. Sharon followed, impeccably dressed, but with a look that didn't hide her resentment. Jake was beside them, looking around as if he was afraid the neighbors would see him. My father opened the door and invited them in. My mother served water. I greeted them. Good morning, Dad. Mom. I called them that because formally they had been, but my voice was no longer sweet. It was the voice of someone setting a distance. Sharon shot me a look and then turned to my mother with a forced smile. I'm sorry, Carol, the kids are impulsive. My mother replied with a slight smile. Impulsive or not, let's sit down and clear this up. Frank didn't touch his water. He leaned back in the armchair and asked directly, why did you call us here? The wedding is over. The bride left on her own and even made a video to humiliate us. We've been through enough shame. Hearing shame, I felt my face burn, but I said nothing. I looked at my father. He put down his cup and said slowly, you say you've been through shame. Could you tell me what that shame is, that my daughter returned the jewelry and left after being pressured to hand it over in the middle of the night? Or is the shame that your family didn't act correctly? Sharon immediately interjected, raising her voice. No one pressured her, I just offered to keep it for her. She's a rebel. She imagined it all and caused a scene. My father nodded slightly and continued. If it was just to keep it, why did you say that? The jewelry that comes into this house belongs to this house. Sharon was speechless for a moment, then defended herself. I said it to teach her the rules. A daughter-in-law needs to know her place. My mother placed her hand on the table, her voice soft but firm. You don't teach rules by demanding gold at 4 inches the morning. Anyone who hears that understands what it means. Frank let out a dismissive laugh. In my house, getting up at 4 is normal. A daughter-in-law sleeping like she's in a hotel, please. Besides, the groom's family gave the jewelry, so the groom's family keeps it. What's wrong with that? My father looked at him intently. You say the jewelry belongs to the groom's family, but when they presented it, who did they give it to? They gave it to my daughter in front of both families. Therefore, it is the couple's property. Whether to keep it or not is their decision, not the parents'. Jake, who had been silent, coughed when my father mentioned the couple's decision, as if he wanted to speak, but he looked at his mother and fell silent again. Sharon crossed her arms with a self-righteous air. You don't understand what it means to be a daughter-in-law. A daughter gets married and follows her husband's family. The house has rules. She rebelled from the first day. My mother replied immediately without raising her voice. My daughter got married to be a wife, not a servant. Rules are based on mutual respect. If you want to be respected, you have to respect others. Sharon laughed with disdain. Respect. You call making that video respect? She did it to humiliate me. It was then that I spoke. I didn't say much, just the essentials. Mom, I recorded the video because I was afraid of being falsely accused. I returned the jewelry. I didn't keep anything. I recorded it so no one could say I ran off with the gold, Frank shouted. No one in this house said you ran off with the gold. I looked at him calmly. I can't say who, but I've already heard insinuations. I was just being cautious. Chris, who had been quiet until then, cleared his throat and looked at Sharon coldly. Ma'am, speak more carefully. We don't make things up in my house. We have a record of every word you've said. Sharon froze and turned to Jake for support. You see, son, your in-laws are disrespecting us. Jake stammered, Mom, please. My father stopped him. Enough. I didn't invite you here to play the victims. I'm asking you directly, are you willing to stop pressuring my daughter, to stop insulting her honor, and to respect the couple's decisions? Sharon answered immediately. I didn't insult her. She's the one who gets offended by everything. My mother looked at her intently. Didn't you say the phrase, a girl like that who's going to marry her after this? Sharon fell silent. Frank looked away. Jake lowered his head. That silence was a confession. My father didn't need any more, he said, emphasizing each word. If you are not able to admit your mistake, there is nothing more to talk about. My daughter has returned the jewelry. We consider this engagement over. There will be no further relationship between our two families. Sharon jumped up. Over. After a wedding like this, do you think you can just end it like that? Your daughter has already crossed the threshold of my house. Hearing that, I clenched my fists. My mother stood up instantly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air. Don't you ever say that phrase in my house again. My daughter is not a piece of merchandise you can threaten with. Frank also stood up, his face red. So what do you want? My father looked at him intently. I want peace, but not at the cost of my daughter being humiliated. Please leave. From now on, if anyone speaks ill of invents or insults my daughter's honor, my family will see this through to the end. Sharon looked around as if searching for a neighbor to witness that she was being kicked out, but there was no audience for her drama. She pressed her lips together and pulled Jake to leave. We'll see who loses in the end. Jake looked at me one last time. His eyes reflected a mix of fear, regret, and a hint of helplessness. I returned his gaze not with resentment, but with exhaustion. I understood that in this marriage I hadn't lost because I didn't know how to give in. I had lost because even if I did give in, the other side would never have had enough. The door closed. My mother sat down and sighed. My father was silent for a moment, then said, You see, they didn't come to solve anything. They came to impose. I nodded. I no longer had any hope that a single conversation would fix everything. I only saw one thing clearly. Some people, when they can't keep the money, they keep the gossip. And that gossip, if you don't stop it, can wound very deeply. The door closed, and an absolute silence fell over the house. The silence of people who have just experienced a conversation where everyone understands there's no going back. I stared at the glass of water in front of me. The water was still clear, but my heart was murky. My mother sighed as if releasing all her pent-up frustration. My father, his back straight, didn't light a cigarette or pace. He just fixed his gaze on a point on the wall. He was always like that. The angrier he got, the less he spoke. Chris, leaning against the doorframe, smiled ironically. Did they really think they could come here and dictate their laws? Not a chance. I said nothing, just felt a ringing in my ears from Sharon's last sentence times. You've already crossed the threshold of my house. Asterisk. That phrase was dirty, not because of the words, but the intent. She wanted to suffocate a woman with the weight of gossip. They use reputation to tie you down and then call it morality. My mother looked at me, her voice much softer. Do you regret it, honey? I thought for a second. Regret, yes, I regretted trusting the wrong person. But if she was asking if I was sorry for what I did, I shook my head. I'm not sorry. I'm just sorry for the peace I thought I was going to have. My father nodded and said a short sentence. Regretting a feeling is fine. Regretting someone who doesn't deserve it is not. I lowered my head. My father's words sounded harsh, but they were the anchor keeping me upright. My mother continued very practically. The wedding documents, the gifts. Do you still have anything from them? I shook my head. No, Mom. I didn't take anything. I returned the jewelry and the wedding gifts they gave me. I didn't bring those with me either. Chris interjected. Honestly, if Emily were a gold digger, she wouldn't have recorded a video of herself returning the heirlooms. She did it because she knew they'd try to twist the story. My mother looked at us with a mix of affection and pride, but she was still worried. The worry of an experienced woman who fears what people will say. You did the right thing returning the jewelry, but remember that those who lose money often win with their words. That sentence hit me like a nail because it was exactly what I was thinking. My father stood up, went to a cabinet, and took out the family records, the house deeds. He placed them on the table and said to me, "Luckily you two didn't get to file the marriage license." We looked at it. Chris was silent. My father continued slowly, as if giving a lesson not to lecture but to warn. Filing the license is a legal bond. Once it's done, undoing it isn't simple. It stops being a sentimental issue and becomes a maze of procedures, time, and paperwork. If this happened in 2 days, imagine if you had been married for 5 years. It could have taken you a year to get out of it. I nodded. I had a lump in my throat, but this time it was from gratitude. Gratitude for those holidays that, although they seemed like an inconvenience, had become my escape route. My mother took my hand. If there's no filed license legally, there's no bond. There was a wedding, yes, but we still have a way out for you. I looked at her hand with its small calluses from work and worry. I suddenly felt like a child, but also fortunate because my family wasn't abandoning me with a "you have to put up with it." My father concluded. From now on, no more contact. You focus on your work. We'll resolve this matter civilly. But if anyone touches your honor, this family will not stand by. I nodded. It sounded simple, but I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Just when I thought it was all over, my phone vibrated. A text from Jake. Asterisk. Emily. Please don't do this. My parents were just angry. Come home. Asterisk. I looked at the message and let out a small laugh. Just angry. Angry enough to demand gold at 4 a.m.? Angry enough to insult my honor. I didn't reply. Jake called. I didn't answer. I was afraid that if I did, he would use his soft tone again to drag me into the vicious cycle of give in for my sake, and I didn't want to give in anymore. In less than 10 minutes, Jake called again and again, as if he feared I would disappear from his life. Not out of love, but because if I disappeared, he would be left with the reputation of a man whose marriage fell apart before it even began. And that reputation for a man like Jake is sometimes more fearsome than his wife's pain. Chris, seeing my phone screen flash incessantly, said answer once. Put it on speaker so we can all hear. I hesitated for a second, and then nodded. I answered. I put it on speaker and activated the recorder. Not to hurt him, but to protect myself. Hello, Emily, listen to me. Jake's voice sounded rushed. Come back, please. I'll talk to my mom. I'll ask her to apologize. I asked calmly. Are you asking me to come back out of love or out of fear of what people will say? Jake was silent for a moment. I just don't want this to go any further. Go any further, I asked. You've seen the video. My parents kicked yours out. If people find out... If people find out, I understood everything. He was afraid of the people. He wasn't afraid that I had been insulted. My mother sitting next to me heard it all. Her eyes grew red, but she didn't cry. My father frowned. I spoke directly. Jake, I returned the jewelry so I wouldn't have a bad reputation. Whether I come back or not depends on whether you're on my side. Were you on my side at any point today? Jake stammered. I'm caught in the middle. I let out a soft laugh. Being caught in the middle means I have to put up with it, and I'm not putting up with it anymore. Jake's voice rose. If you do this, you'll make me look ridiculous. My father, hearing that, looked up at the ceiling and said in a voice cold enough for Jake to hear over the speaker, the one who looks ridiculous is the one who makes a mistake, not the one who does the right thing. Jake was speechless. Chris intervened with a firm voice. Jake, don't call anymore. If you have something to say, do it through our parents. If you bother her again, I won't repeat myself. Jake stammered. Chris, I hung up. I didn't prolong the conversation. I sat there feeling something strange. A mix of lightness and pain. Lightness from being free of that pressure. Pain from realizing that the person I trusted to protect me only knew how to protect his own image. My mother put her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "You see, a man who loves his wife fears his wife's suffering, not that people will laugh at him." I nodded. I didn't cry. I just felt that I had matured a little in a way no one would wish for. That night I opened my work planner and marked the next day as a normal day. I told myself my life had to get back on track. As for my husband's family, if they stopped, I would too. But if they didn't, I would show them that a paralegal doesn't just know how to endure. She also knows how to see things through to the end, when her honor is at stake. And as my mother said, it only took one night for the gossip to start moving. There were no posts yet, but I could smell it. The smell of a battle that needs no swords, only words. I got up and opened the window. The wind blew in, fresh. I looked outside and told myself a common phrase. You reap what you sow, and I was not going to let their storm drag me down. I spent the whole night deciding whether to make it public or not. To be honest, I don't like airing my private life on the internet. I hate the feeling of my privacy being picked apart like fish at a market. But I hate even more that others use my private life as bait for gossip. My mother advised, think it through. Don't act out of anger. My father said, if you do it right. Don't add or subtract anything. Chris added, post the truth and close the door. Don't get into arguments. I listened and followed all 3 pieces of advice to the letter. First thing in the morning before heading to work, I sat at the table and wrote a brief text. I didn't elaborate or complain. I wrote it as if preparing a report, clear, organized, and with just the necessary information. I opened my personal Facebook profile and set it so only my friends and acquaintances could see it. I posted exactly 3 points. First, I confirmed that I had returned the entirety of the wedding jewelry in the living room of my in-laws' house. Second, I clarified that I had left their home after being pressured to hand over said jewelry in the middle of the night and for receiving unacceptable treatment. Third, I demanded an end to all lies and defamation against my character. If they continued, I would resort to legal action. I added a small polite note times I do not wish to make a scandal of this, but I will not accept being defamed. Asterisk. And I attached the video. I posted the original version uncut without music or sensationalist text. I just pixelated a few background details to protect their privacy. The rest was left intact. The scene where I placed the box on the table, counted the pieces of jewelry, and said, I am returning everything. I am keeping nothing. I hit post and put my phone down. My heart was pounding not from fear but because I knew that once the truth was out, it wouldn't be so easy to manipulate the story and whoever was lying would panic. Just as I expected, in less than 10 minutes, the notifications started pouring in. Someone commented, "Oh my God, so that's what happened." Another messaged me privately, "Emily, I'm so sorry. I heard rumors and I was wrong." But the most revealing thing was the silence. Those who had previously participated in the rumors were now quiet. Chloe called me ecstatic. "You posted it. Good for you. Did you know some of the women from the neighborhood group have already deleted their messages?" "Who?" I asked. She sent me a screenshot. The neighbor who had been the most vocal had deleted her comment about me running off with the family jewels. But deleting it didn't mean she hadn't said it. Chloe's proof was still there. I got to the office. Before turning on my computer, my phone vibrated. It was Jake. I didn't answer. I let it ring. I didn't want to hear, "Don't make a scene again." After the third call, a text came through. "Emily, delete it. My mother can't take it." Asterisk. I read the message and didn't reply immediately. I activated my phone's voice recorder and replied with a single sentence. "Times, I only posted the truth. Whoever can't take it shouldn't have lied." Asterisk. Jake called again. This time I answered with the recorder on. My voice was neutral. "Hello, are you crazy?" Jake yelled. "Why did you post that? What position does that leave my family in?" I replied, "What position does that leave my family in? Or what position did the rumors that I ran off with the gold leave me?" And Jake was silent for a second. It just slipped out of my mom's mouth. I let out a bitter laugh. If it slips out but spreads everywhere, it's no longer a slip-up. It's intentional. He changed his tone. "Delete it, please. I promise I'll talk to her." "You've been promising to talk to her since the middle of the night the other day, and the result was rumors." Why should I believe you now? Jake was speechless. I heard his ragged breathing and then he asked in a low voice, "What do you want?" I answered concisely. "I want them to stop, and I want them to apologize." "Apologize? My mother didn't do anything," he exclaimed indignant. I cut him off. If she didn't do anything, why is she so afraid of the video? And I hung up. I understood that arguing with someone who only fears losing their reputation is pointless. At noon, I received another call from an unknown number. It was an older man's voice. He sounded like a family acquaintance. "Emily, this is a friend of the family. Listen, dear, take down the post. People are talking a lot. You're hurting Jake a lot." "Who is this?" "Excuse me, I'm an elder." "Take it down and talk. Problems are solved within the family." I understood instantly. They wanted to pull me back onto their turf where they had the advantage to pressure me into silence. I responded clearly. "I am not taking it down. I only posted the truth to stop the defamation. If there's talking to be done, it will be with my parents present and following a formal procedure." The man got annoyed. Such a stubborn girl. "In the future..." I cut him off. "Sir, don't threaten me with the future. I'm not selling my honor in exchange for peace and quiet." I hung up, saved the recording, and sent it to Chris. Messages of apology started coming in from unexpected people. A distant relative of Jake's wrote to me, "Emily, I'm so sorry." I listened to Sharon and believed her. An old friend said, "I trust you." So much for gossip. Even one of the women from the neighborhood group wrote, "I'm sorry I got carried away," and commented without knowing. I've deleted it now. I read the messages without joy, only exhaustion, because an apology didn't erase the feeling of having been everyone's plaything. When I got home that night, my father was sitting looking at my post on his phone. He doesn't use social media much, but that day he had examined everything. "You did the right thing. You didn't insult anyone. You just presented the evidence." My mother was still worried. "But if you do this, they'll hold a grudge." Chris replied, "Let them. If they have the right to lie, we have the right to tell the truth." I nodded. I understood that the truth always comes at a price, but I'd rather pay it than live with a bad reputation invented by others. That night my phone rang again. It was Sharon. I didn't want to answer, but I knew that to make them stop I needed more proof that they were still harassing me. I answered with the recorder on. Sharon's voice was trembling but still sharp. "Emily, I didn't know you were so cruel. Are you trying to kill me?" "With what you've done, I can't even leave my house," I replied calmly. "I haven't killed anyone. I just defended myself against defamation." "Take it down," she screamed. "If you don't take it down, you'll face the consequences." "What are you going to do to me?" I asked. She gasped for air, and then spat out a venomous sentence. "You think you're clean, you've crossed the threshold of my house. With just one word from me, I can ruin your life." I felt a shiver, not of fear but of disgust. I said slowly, "That's enough. I've recorded this conversation. From now on, don't call me again." I hung up. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. They had reached the point of threatening my honor. And when someone threatens, it's because they're losing. I turned to my parents. They're still at it. "I think I need to file a police report." My father nodded, his gaze sharp. "Do it. But do it right." I looked out the window. The night was calm, but inside me the battle had moved from rumors to the law, and I knew the next step would make them think twice before taking me lightly. Because in this life, sometimes people have to learn the hard way, and I had learned enough. The next morning I requested a half-day off from work. I told my boss concisely, "I have a family matter that I need to resolve through legal channels." He nodded without asking further questions. Some things are understood without needing details. Chris accompanied me. During the drive, he barely spoke. He just gave me one piece of advice. Tell the truth in there, nothing more. Present what you have proof of, and keep quiet about what you don't. It sounded like a lawyer's advice, but it was from a brother who wanted to protect his sister the right way. I carried a small folder with documents arranged chronologically. Just like I did, with contracts, the video of me returning the jewelry, screenshots of the chats, and comments accusing me of taking it, recordings of the threatening calls, detailed timeline I had prepared myself, and a list of the names and phone numbers involved. I didn't feel like I was exaggerating. I felt I was doing what was necessary. Because if you don't protect yourself, no one else will. We arrived at the police station. I took a deep breath. I wasn't unfamiliar with legal concepts, but entering as a victim of defamation was different. I felt a mix of humiliation, anger, and sadness. Sadness for a marriage that had turned cold before it even began. Chris put a hand on my shoulder. Just act like you're filing a report. Don't get nervous. I nodded. The officer who attended to me asked for my name, address, and the reason for the report. I explained it clearly and coherently without crying or complaining. I just described the facts. My husband's family has spread false information about me, accusing me of theft, insulting my honor, and making threats that are seriously affecting my personal and professional life. The officer asked, "Do you have proof?" "Yes, I do." And I handed them to him one by one in order. The officer watched the video and nodded. He looked at the screenshots and asked who had posted the messages. I answered what I knew without speculating. When he listened to the recording of Sharon's call, he paused and asked me a question that hurt but was necessary. "Do you feel seriously offended?" I looked him in the eye and answered, "Yes, because a woman's honor is not something you can threaten." The officer took notes, showed me how to write the formal complaint, and I signed it. My hand was no longer trembling. Curiously, the further I went down the right path, the calmer I felt, because they didn't need my laments. They needed facts and proof. As we left, Chris gave me a pat on the back. "It's done. From now on, even if they don't want to stop, they'll have to." I didn't feel an arrogant victory, just that at least I was no longer cornered. On the way home, Jake sent me a message. This time, the tone was different. It was longer and softer. "Emily, please don't do this. My mother was just angry. I'll tell her to apologize. Can you withdraw the complaint?" Times I read the message and didn't reply. I took a screenshot and saved it. I reminded myself that from now on everything was evidence. I got home. My mother asked, "How did it go, honey?" I filed the report and presented the evidence. "They will summon us for a statement." My mother let out a long sigh. My father nodded. "Good. From now on we won't speak with tears anymore." That same afternoon the home phone rang. It was Jake. My father answered. I was beside him and heard everything. "Dad, please tell Emily to withdraw the complaint." "The police have called my mother," my father replied with a calm that cut the air. "Ask your mother if she thought about the consequences when she was defaming, insulting, and threatening." "Now that she's scared, she wants to apologize," Jake stammered. "It was a mistake." My father cut him off. "Mistake or not, tell your parents that if they want to solve this, they should do it properly. A formal apology and a stop to the defamation. A complaint isn't withdrawn with pleas." And he hung up. That night, Chloe messaged me. Asterisk. There's chaos at their house. The neighbor deleted all her messages. Sharon deactivated her Facebook, and Jake is pacing back and forth. Asterisk. She added times. See, as soon as the law gets involved, the whole "I'm the one who's right here" attitude ends. Asterisk. I read it without joy. I just thought that the truth sometimes needs an official stamp for people to accept it. That night, Sharon called me again. I didn't answer. I sent her a message times. Any communication should be through the official summons. Asterisk. And I blocked her number. I knew they would now try to beg, cry, and even threaten again to scare me into withdrawing the complaint. But I was no longer afraid. I had crossed that threshold when they used my honor as a weapon. Before sleeping, I reviewed the timeline of events I had prepared. It was like a map, and I knew that map would lead me to the end of the road, a place where the truth would be called by its name, and where those who lie pay the consequences. I turned off the light. In the darkness, I remembered the saying, "You reap what you sow." Sharon had sown words. Now she would reap the consequences. Jake had sown evasiveness. Now he would reap loss. And me, I had only sown one thing, the truth. And I would go to the end to defend it. 2 days after filing the report, Chris accompanied me to the station for the summons. When we arrived, I saw my husband's family sitting in the waiting area. Sharon was dressed in dark clothes, her face gaunt but with the same defiant look. Frank had his arms crossed, looking annoyed. Jake sat with his head down, nervous. I walked in and greeted them politely. "Good morning." I didn't expect a response. Sharon glared at me. Jake looked up. His eyes seemed to plead times, "Don't continue." Asterisk. But I didn't accept his plea. I had given him too many chances. An officer led us into a room. The space was simple. The white fluorescent light made everything seem starker. There was no stage for drama, no neighbors to impress. The officer began by confirming our details, and then turned to them. "Are you aware of the contents of the complaint filed by Miss Emily Frank?" Answered first harshly. "We are, but I want to make it clear that my family has not defamed anyone. She left on her own and posted a video to humiliate us." The officer took a note and turned to me. "Miss Emily, please briefly state the facts." I consulted my timeline and spoke clearly, describing the events from the pounding on the door at 4 a.m. to the threatening calls. I didn't use harsh language, just terms like defamation, false information, and violation of the right to honor. The officer turned to Sharon. "Did you demand that Miss Emily hand over the jewelry in the middle of the night? I just offered to keep it for her." She misinterpreted everything and caused a scene she denied. "Did you say the phrase, 'The jewelry that comes into this house belongs to this house'?" Sharon hesitated. "I said it as a way to teach her the rules, not with the intention of taking it." The officer looked at me. "Do you have proof?" I showed him the video and the recordings of the calls. When the video played showing me counting the jewelry one by one, the room fell silent. The truth crushed any argument. The video proves that Miss Emily returned all the jewelry. Therefore was the dissemination of information that she took it, based on the truth, the officer asked. Frank looked away. Sharon was speechless. Jake lowered his head. The officer continued. "Are you aware that spreading false information that damages a person's honor is a crime?" Sharon burst into tears, a cry of fear and anger. "Officer, I'm an old woman. I was just worried about my son. This daughter-in-law is so rebellious. She recorded us." The officer turned to Jake. "Mr. Jake, do you confirm that your wife returned the jewelry?" Jake nodded silently. It was the final nail in the coffin of their lies. The officer proposed mediation. If the accused party admits their mistake, apologizes, and ceases their behavior, an agreement can be reached. Otherwise, the procedure will continue. It was then that I spoke, laying out my conditions as if they were clauses in a contract. "I do not wish to prolong this. My conditions are threefold. First, a public apology and retraction in the same circles where the lie was spread. Second, a commitment to cease all forms of harassment. Third, a symbolic compensation for the emotional distress caused." Frank jumped up. "Compensation? She humiliates us and then asks for money." I looked at him calmly. "I'm not asking for it to get rich, but for justice. Whoever makes a mistake pays for it. It's a basic principle." Jake looked at me, his eyes red. "Emily, please." I didn't look at him. I addressed the officer. "I don't need verbal pleas. I need actions." At that moment, Sharon broke down. She was no longer the matriarch imposing her law. "I'm sorry, Emily. I lost my temper." I listened to her apology without any satisfaction, only a bitter taste. An apology forced by circumstances. They drew up a conciliation agreement with the 3 conditions. I signed it without my hand trembling. I knew I was doing the right thing. My husband's family signed as well. Frank with a grim face, Sharon with a shaky hand, and Jake as if he were signing the end of his own story. As we left, Jake followed me. "Emily, is this really the end of everything?" I didn't answer. I walked outside, breathed in the fresh air, and turning around I said the words that closed it all. "Jake, we ended the moment you stood at that bedroom door and said, 'Let Mom keep it so we know it's safe.' I've just been cleaning up the wreckage." I walked away without looking back. In my rearview mirror I saw Sharon slumped on a bench, Frank standing beside her without his authoritarian air, and Jake in the middle, a lost look in his eyes. I didn't rejoice in their misfortune. I just felt that sometimes justice isn't something grand. It's simply the truth put in its place under a white light, where no one can deny it. Ever since we signed the agreement, I stopped waking up with the feeling of being hunted. But that didn't mean my heart was at peace. Rumors are like smoke. Even after you put out the fire, the smell lingers. As agreed, my husband's family had to retract their statements in the same places where they had spread the lies, the neighborhood chat group, and among the most gossipy relatives. That afternoon, Chloe sent me a screenshot. The neighbor had written in the group, "Times I want to clarify that Emily did not take any jewelry. She returned all of it." I misheard and spoke without knowing. My apologies. Asterisk. Below were some embarrassed emojis and a lot of silence. Then another screenshot from one of their family groups. Sharon had written, "Times I want to clarify that the other day out of anger I said some incorrect things that led to a misunderstanding about Emily. She returned all the heirlooms. She didn't keep anything. I'm sorry." Asterisk, I read the word anger and sighed. I knew that for someone like her, admitting a mistake was like tearing out a piece of pride. The next morning, Jake showed up at my parents' house and handed my father an envelope with the agreed-upon financial compensation. He didn't dare come inside. I took the envelope not with joy but like someone verifying the fulfillment of a contract. I'm accepting this because it's the responsibility they must assume. I told my mother not because I want to trade my honor for money. I know, honey, she replied. Your father and I just wanted you to get your dignity back. Consider that money the tuition they had to pay for their lesson. Shortly after, I received a call from Jake. There was no trace of anger in his voice anymore, just a flat, pleading tone. Emily, I know I messed up. I've lost you, but please come back. My mother has learned her lesson. She's scared. It won't happen again. We'll get our own place just like I promised. Give me a chance. I put my fork down on the plate. You say your mother is scared, I replied with an icy calm. Does that mean if she wasn't scared she would do it again? Jake was speechless. Then, as if his true nature slipped out, he added, But you went too far too. Taking it to the police, causing this whole scandal. A wife has to know how to give in a little too. That was the last straw. Giving in so they can take my jewelry, my decision-making power, and my honor isn't giving in, Jake. It's self-destruction. But I love you, he murmured as a last resort. A love that lets me suffer humiliation. A love that fears gossip more than my pain. That's a love that, with your permission, I do not accept. And I hung up. I sat there for a few minutes. I didn't cry. I just felt as if a layer of dust had been wiped from my soul. That call was the final confirmation. Jake hadn't fundamentally changed. He had only reacted out of fear. That night I did 3 things. I blocked Jake's number, Sharon's number, and I tightened the privacy settings on my social media. A few days later, my father coordinated the return of the remaining wedding gifts. Each family kept what was theirs, no drama, no reproaches, just an administrative closing. The price they paid wasn't the money, it was their reputation. The gossipy neighbor became invisible. Frank no longer held court at the local bar. And Jake lost the most. He lost his image as a good, responsible man. The people in the neighborhood began to see him as the one who didn't defend his wife. For a man, sometimes the loss of respect hurts more than the loss of money. I returned to my routine. Work-home weekends cooking with my mom. One day, while we were making lasagna, she said, Honey, in a woman's life sometimes you have to be strong, not to be above others, but so that others don't sink you. I nodded. I realized that a marriage doesn't die because of one argument or some pounding on a door. It dies from broken promises, from cowardice, and from a family that sees a daughter-in-law as a servant with a built-in safe. I was lucky I hadn't filed the paperwork that I could end it all cleanly. Sometimes a misfortune wakes you up just in time to save you from a lifetime of misery. And here, I close this chapter not because I've forgotten it, but because I no longer give it the power to affect me. The lesson I take with me is simple. In family life, compromise on the small things to maintain harmony, but never ever compromise on your boundaries, your assets, or your honor. Because to give in once is to open the door to a lifetime of disrespect.